All right, let's get started. I'm James Orr. Tonight we're doing how to select a real estate agent. I'll talk a little bit about why we're doing this class here in a moment, but for now, I'll tell you about upcoming classes. So next Tuesday night, you were the only one on last night. Was Fixer Upper Nomad any good?
Yeah, it was good information.
Yeah, like you wouldn't want to do Fixer Upper Nomad, but it was like good if you were going to do it.
Well, initially I thought I would, but after you presenting some numbers on new construction, I really started to see.
Why bother?
Yeah.
Yeah, why not just buy something new every year? It's much easier to get your spouse to go along with new construction too. Yeah. I will tell you that. So if you guys want to see that, I sent that in an email earlier today. There's a link to the Fixer Upper Nomad class. It's available for everybody. I just opened it up, so you guys can go listen to that. Next Tuesday night, though, is Cash Flow Explosion, basically how to improve cash flow on rental properties and things of that nature. That's going to be on Tuesday, and what I plan on doing, because I'm going to be at a concert that night, I will make the recording of the last time I taught that class live here available to everybody. I'll open it up for the day. You guys will be able to watch that, watch the recording, and then I'll basically turn it off next morning when I wake up. So you'll want to watch that on Tuesday, August 15th, and I'll send out an email to remind everybody. How to get down payments. This is going to be on next Wednesday, August 16th, and it's going to be all the different strategies for coming up with down payment. I originally taught this as like a Nomad class, but it really applies to no matter if you're doing Nomad, fix and flip, traditional 20% down, buy and hold. All that stuff is all the same stuff. So it's going to be a class on Wednesday, August 16th, next week, on how to get down payment. Then the following Tuesday, August 22nd, is the bookkeeping and accounting class. How many people came to the bookkeeping and accounting class we just did like a month ago, a month and a half ago, 2 months ago? No one. All right, good. This is going to be new to you. So basically the class will be, were you here for that, Allison? Okay, good. So basically this is going to be me teaching that class. Brian taught it last time. He gave you access to his spreadsheet. I showed you that there's a web-based version of his spreadsheet there, and it tells you how to do bookkeeping and accounting for real estate investors. And so the online version of the spreadsheet's available too, and that is going to be Tuesday, August 22nd, all the bookkeeping and accounting for real estate investors and nomads. It's really built for nomads, but you can use it for anything. Then the class right after that, August 23rd, is how to be the ideal client that realtors call first with the best deals. So, I get this question all the time. How do I get you to call me first? You were joking around, just if you have a good deal, call me, right? You've heard this so many times. But how do you be the one at the very top of the list that people call? And so there's some definite strategies you can use in order to be that person. And we're going to go through a whole class on the factors that have an impact and what you should do. And I'll kind of reveal to you sort of behind the curtain as to how real estate agents think when you tell them, if you come across a deal, call me first, and how that works and how people prioritize and things like that. So it's going to be a really good class. I've taught this before. It's really popular. That's going to be on Wednesday, August 23rd. And then return on investment and return on equity. That is actually a really good class. I know some of these topics, some of the class titles, they seem so benign, and then you come to class, you're like, wow, there's some really interesting things there. This one is about the difference between figuring out what your return is on investment when you invest in a property, what your return you're getting on that initial investment is, versus as you own an investment property over a period of time, how your investments, how the return characteristics change if you consider if I sold this property, I'd have this much money. What's the return I'm getting on the amount of money I currently have in equity in the property? And so there's some really interesting charts and data that we go into to do some deal analysis stuff on that, and that's going to be on Tuesday, August 29th. That's webinar. So the Tuesday classes are webinars. This is a recording. This is live here. This one's live here, but the Tuesday ones are the webinar ones. Any questions on upcoming class schedule? Any particular classes? I know you guys probably all filled out forms except you tonight. Anyone have any class topics that you wanted to see in particular that you needed? Because we're still doing the schedule for September right now. Anything in particular? We kind of covered everything? All right, well, cool. If you think of anything, let me know. So introduction. So who are you, and then how do you select a real estate agent? Let's start with you, John.
My name is John. I'm new to Fort Collins. We just got here from Columbus, Ohio.
Wow.
Yeah, hot market there. You can't keep them. One day, everything's gone. I'm a drone pilot, certified FAA. I do aerial, residential, and commercial aerial photography.
Cool.
And we've done some real estate transactions in the past, and now we're just tired of working hard. Want to work smart, make some money.
Okay. Our market is equally hot. We are seeing things get, multiple offers get bid up significantly above asking price and go within the first day too.
Yeah.
So it's tricky to wholesale if that's what you're trying to do in our market. It's not the best market to do that. The two best strategies here right now are probably the nomad strategy and lease options.
Okay.
So buying properties and then offering them on a lease option exit to tenant buyers.
I was just looking at a webinar last night and they were talking about that. It seemed pretty interesting. I never thought of it before. Never occurred to me, but it made perfect sense what they were talking about.
Yep, those are the two best strategies in our market right now, besides buy and hold. I mean, if you have money to buy and hold, it's a great market for that. Our appreciation's really strong. Cash flow is not the best. We're not a huge high cash flow market. It's not like we're in the southeast or anything like that. But decent cash flow, more like a blue chip stock in a lot of ways, with decent, very strong appreciation and okay cash flow. So yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. But thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Alicia.
My name's Alicia Esparza, and I've been coming because I like the people here for one thing.
Oh, good.
And just the atmosphere and knowing and learning things that everybody's going through, what they're doing. I eventually have some things going, and I'll put that to practice here pretty soon.
Very cool. How do you select a real estate agent?
Well, in my business, they have to be somebody that knows how to work with investors and with, distressed properties, foreclosures.
So just that. Any investor, any agent that works with.
Just that because they don't know a lot of them, because I've spoken to some of them, and there's a lot that they have to know before they can even attempt to work with investors. And so, yeah, they have to be that. They have to be a person that knows how to do a foreclosure, how to do the contract, how to do all of that for that area and working with investors.
Okay, cool. Thanks. I don't think I asked you. How do you select a real estate agent, John?
I have, in the past, it's usually word of mouth. Somebody referred me to this agent. So I didn't really put a lot of effort into trying to select an agent. I just went by, okay, who did you use? Close friends, relatives, that type of thing. And that didn't really work out too good for me too much.
Okay.
So I'm hoping to get some pretty good information here tonight.
Okay, cool. Are you from Ohio originally?
Yep.
Okay, awesome, cool. Hello. So who are you and how do you select a real estate agent?
My name's Jim Davenport. How do I select a real estate agent? Unfortunately, it's probably the same format.
Yeah.
I've lived in Colorado all my life, so I know a lot of realtors. It's actually kind of a problem because you offend one if you go with the other kind of thing. So that's an interesting question, I guess.
Yeah.
Dilemma I'm still facing.
So how do you do it now?
Friends of the family, basically.
Okay, so you use friends of the family?
Right.
Okay, awesome, thanks, welcome. Hello.
I'm Brandon. I've only had to use a real estate agent once when I bought my house 10 years ago, and it was word of mouth.
How'd you select them? Just friend told you to use them?
A friend had used them before and liked them, and I was young, and
Seemed like a reasonable thing to do, huh?
I was 22 at the time. It sounded like a good idea.
That's awesome. Cool, thanks, welcome. Elijah.
I'm Elijah. Selecting a real estate agent, probably someone that communicates well, so if I call them and they call me back within a reasonable amount of time. It seems like it'd be a lot to ask, but I've actually had one in the past where it didn't work out that way, and it didn't work that well.
That's so strange. That's such an important thing. I didn't even put it on my list.
And I've had one
Yeah.
before where I couldn't even leave voicemails because the voicemail box was full.
I've tried to call agents who I'm trying to work with on a deal on the other side, and their voicemail's been full. It's kind of really frustrating, actually.
Yeah, like
And lenders. Yeah,
really hard when you're trying to get a place sold. So.
yeah. Yeah, that should be like a minimum criteria. Like, okay, they breathe, they return phone calls. What else do we need to have on there? What's that? Their license, that's probably another good one. So there's probably like minimum criteria I didn't even put in the presentation. So if I listen to this again later on, I should add a slide on that because you're right. I mean, I have that problem with contractors all the time. I mean, I remember calling contractors and having to call like 4 or 5 different ones. And it was like, you're trying to get 4 or 5 bids and it's like, you get one to call you back and they're like, oh, I can come out next week. Yeah, it's just crazy. Yeah, so awesome, thanks, welcome. Hello.
Hello, I'm Beth. We have used a real estate agent, and I think we got really lucky because Zach, my fiance, is not here tonight. But
Yep.
But every realtor is going to see something different. So we'd like to use more than one, but we definitely don't want to offend them because they're awesome.
Totally. We're going to talk about that tonight. The pros and cons of using one versus multiple. We're going to have a slide on that. So awesome. Welcome. Hello.
I'm James's my husband. How I find real estate parent. And in the past, for me, is I like to do research a little bit. In the past, before, I like to see what kind of the companies how they do, and then from there, I call them and I interview them, kind of, and ask them a couple questions, and then from there, I narrow it down. And sometimes I even meet with them.
Are you interviewing the company or are you interviewing the person?
Both.
Okay. Very cool. Awesome. Thanks. Welcome. Curtis, did you even know that? Yes. So who are you and how do you select a real estate agent?
I'm Curtis, and in the past I wasn't very good about picking agents, so now I just rely on her.
Okay. She does all the screening for you.
Yes.
That's awesome. That works out really well. All right, Tammy, so who are you and how do you select a real estate agent?
I'm Tammy Orr. I am a real estate agent. I work with James. As far as like selecting a real estate agent in another market, I think some of what Karen said, doing a little research, meeting with people, just finding out if they are a good fit for what I need. And if they present well in person, I kind of have confidence in them that they can do a good job and get it done. Maybe return phone calls, the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Wise.
That return to phone calls one, that took me by surprise. I'm like, yeah, it should have been on my list.
Well, good communication. You don't want them to go AWOL after you.
Yeah, I don't even know if good communication's on my list. That's pretty interesting too. Yeah, this is why we do these classes, so I can learn how to select an agent. That's exactly what it is. Allison, who are you and how do you select your real estate agent?
Hi, I'm Allison, and so far I haven't needed to select a real estate agent, but by this point I'd probably ask my mom since she probably knows a lot of real estate agents all across the country.
That's true. That is very true. All right, cool. All right, so how to select a real estate agent. So why are we doing this class? It's especially odd since I am a real estate agent, and most of the time, we would just say use James in a room. But so why is James teaching a class on this? Number one reason is Tammy lost her dad last week, and so there's a death in the family, and we now need to sell a house in a distant city, and so I'm not in that city. So we're not in Chicago area to find a real estate agent. So we really started thinking, now that we're in the business, what's the sort of like behind the scenes considerations for us to use when we're going to go select a real estate agent in like the Chicago area. Plus, you'll kind of get some inside scoop as to how I would think about selecting a real estate agent locally, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So from someone who's in the business, how do you select a real estate agent to use? In my opinion, what's important, in my opinion, what's not, and we'll go over some of the considerations and background info, and then we will review what I consider to be good real estate agent interview questions and what I think are good answers and what are some bad answers for some of those things. All right, so first off, let's go over what the differences are between real estate agents, real estate brokers, and realtors, okay? How many people know what the differences are? Anyone know what the difference is? Want to share? So in most states, that's true. In Colorado, we technically don't even have real estate agents. What we only have is real estate brokers. We have broker associates and managing brokers or independent brokers. And so in other states, a real estate broker is someone who has real estate agents that work for them. They are in charge of managing and overseeing them in other markets. In Colorado, our system is set up slightly different. We call everybody a real estate broker. There's a managing broker who is in charge of managing real estate brokers in their office, which we call broker associates. They're associated with that particular brokerage firm, okay? And there is a one-to-one relationship for real estate brokers, so they can only really technically work for one company at a time because they have to have someone who is responsible for all their stuff, okay? So here in Colorado, we call managing brokers or independent brokers someone who does not need a manager. They can actually manage themselves, which is what I am in our state. I'm a managing broker because Tammy actually works for our brokerage and she works technically for me. Although we're probably going to switch that role. She's probably going to become managing broker here soon. And then if Tammy wasn't around working in my firm, I would be an independent broker where I could work for myself, okay? So if you go and you hear the word broker or agent, that's usually someone who works for themselves, but the managing broker or broker in another state is someone who works solo, works for themselves. The other one is they work for someone else, I guess I should say. So what's a realtor? If those are agents and brokers, what's a realtor? And by the way, we are in the Fort Collins Board of Realtors education room right now. So what's different? What's a realtor compared to a real estate agent or a real estate broker? Anyone know? What's that? I'm sorry?
Are they certified?
They're not technically certified. Anyone have an idea? It's a special trade organization where we contribute additional money. We get a little bit of extra training. We have to take a ethics class, and we need to agree to abide by the code of ethics for real estate for realtors. And you get to call yourself a realtor if you do that. If you subscribe to the local, state level, the state, and the National Association of Realtors, you pay an extra fee, and you agree to abide by a code of ethics, that you can call yourself a realtor. So a realtor is sort of a subspecialty. It's like an extra designation you can have. That means you're agreeing to abide by a code of ethics, and you get some additional training. Did I describe that well, Tam? Okay. So what's the difference between them? Does that make sense, the difference between agents, brokers, and realtors? So based on what I just told you, do you have a preference? Do you say, oh, I definitely want to work with the owner of the company who's a broker and they're managing people? Or I definitely want to work with an agent who has someone else looking over them and managing them? Or do I only want to work with realtors who agree to abide by this special code of ethics? Any preferences?
Is there an experience difference between the?
Nope. No experience difference. There is an experience difference if you're a managing broker. A managing broker needs to have worked for someone else for at least 2 years. But what's tricky about that is this. There's a couple weird loopholes in the market. So this is the part that's interesting, right? Because you guys get to kind of see behind the scenes of how this really works. So I could go work, let's say I'm a brand new real estate agent. I could go work for, insert name of any company, Coldwell Banker, Keller Williams, Remax, any of those guys. I could go work for any of these companies. I could sit in the office, pay my office fees for 2 years, maybe do 1 or 2 transactions, but after my 2-year waiting period is up, I could then go out and apply to become a managing broker myself. So even though I'm a managing broker, it doesn't necessarily mean I've done any number of transactions, which is, they're trying to change it. But right now, that's the rule. It's calendar year, just 2 years. Yep. So basically, there's no real extra experience for being a managing broker. And what's also very interesting, and one of the reasons why we're switching, is the skill set for being a managing broker is different than the skill set for being a broker who actually goes out there and helps people buy houses. Managing someone and keeping someone out of trouble is a different skill than being able to go out there and help people buy and sell houses. But they're saying you need 2 years in the business to be able to go and manage other people and then oversee those yourselves. Okay? So do you have a preference? Is there a strong preference? Is there one better than another in your mind? For Tammy going to Chicago and saying, I'm going to go hire a real estate agent or a broker or a realtor to sell my parents' house, should I say, you really should get an agent, or you really should get a broker, or you really should get a realtor? Do I care? What do you think?
Yeah, the realtor should have more ethics training.
That's true.
Should.
Now, can someone agree to abide by a code of ethics, but then not do it?
See it every day.
Right, exactly. So could there be someone who's like, I'm not going to pay the extra, what is it, $700 a year or something like that for a realtor thing? Like $700 a year. Am I going to pay the extra $700 a year, but I am going to abide by all the code of ethics. I'm going to operate a really clean business. I just don't want to pay the extra money because it's not worth it to me. Because the public, in a large way, doesn't understand the difference. You guys who I would consider to be a step above the public because you're trying to be in the real estate investing business, you're smarter than the average bear. You're coming in and you didn't know the difference, right? So, the National Association of Realtors, NAR, is trying to educate the public as to you should pick a realtor versus every other real estate agent and try to do that. And I think that there's a compelling reason to say they do get a little bit of ethics training. We do have to do that every 2 years, 3 years, 2 years. So we have to do like every 2 years, we have like a 4 or 6 hour class on ethics to try to make sure we go through some sticky points in the business. But besides that, is there a lot of difference? They have access to more training. One of the reasons we have these education rooms is so that the National Association of Realtors and the local board can put on classes and teach classes to their constituents. And there's some lobbying in Congress to help you guys make sure that the public gets what's good for them as far as housing and owning stuff. So there's really some lobbying going on. But besides that, there's really not a lot of difference, right? So would you have a strong preference? You'd want a broker instead of a real estate agent?
Well, if they're, you're just gonna pay that extra $700
Well, you're not paying that. I am, as the realtor. So does it really matter?
Do the same, they would still do, you know, give you the same treat, do everything that the realtor would do, that if the broker can do too.
Yeah. So in my opinion, if everything else is exactly equal, this is a tiebreaker. I'd go with the realtor. But other than that, I'm not really making a strong preference either way. Would you? What's that?
They get the nice R.
Yeah, they get the little R thing. Yeah.
Well,
Would-
like you said before, it changes from state to state too. Because in Ohio, it's not the same, the definitions you just gave are not the same.
So in Ohio, my understanding is that there's agents who work for brokers, and then either one of them can join the National Association of Realtors and the Ohio.
They have to join.
It's not required.
Oh, okay.
It's not required. There's optional. Now, on a company by company basis, they can require it. So, for example, Keller Williams here in town, and by the way, I'm not picking on any brokerage tonight. Okay, I don't have any strong preference either way, and I'm independent, so it doesn't really matter. But you could go to Coldwell Banker or Keller Williams. They could say we require all of our people to be realtors, and you can't have some people in their office be realtors and other people not be.
Right.
How they do it, they get around it, is they form two companies. So for example, I used to be with Cherry Creek Properties, and there was a Cherry Creek Properties LLC and a Cherry Creek Properties Inc. And what they would do is one of them was a realtor house and the other one was a non-realtor house. And the ones that didn't want to be realtors and pay the extra fees, they went to one of them. And the ones that wanted to, they went to the other one. And so they split it off that way.
See, probably where I got the misconception was because I always dealt with RE/MAX.
And they were all realtors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because I never went with anybody else, I was just
Yep.
under the impression that they all were like that.
That's right. Yep. And in our office, we do require it. So Tammy has to become a realtor now. So she's a real estate agent in our office. Okay? All right. So should you insist on one over another? I don't think you should, but it's up to you. You guys can decide what you want to do. I'll use the word agent throughout, even though I may be talking about realtors or brokers. I'm just going to say generically agent. If it really matters and I'm going to make a distinction, I will point it out. I'll be like, listen, agents have to do it this way, brokers have to do it this way, but there's really not a lot of exceptions. I can't think of any, actually. Can you think of any, Tam? Yeah, I can't think of any either. All right, so what does the real estate agent do? So the premise of this class is how do you select a real estate agent? And part of what you should understand before we get too far along is what skills are you looking for? Are you looking for someone that can draft contracts, actually write out new provisions and stuff like that? Are you looking for somebody that can, do an appraisal? Are you looking for someone that can negotiate contracts or someone that can, inspect the house and point out things that are wrong with it? What skills should your real estate agent have? And so let's look down this list. And this list came from our attorney actually prepared this as like a disclosure that we give out to clients when we're about to go show them houses or something like that. And it basically says, hey, listen, what do you expect your real estate agent to do? What do you expect other professionals to provide those services for you? And we basically have our clients sign this so that they know where to go to get these services. Not all of these things are for agents, so let's talk about them. Appraisal of the property. Giving you a definitive value that the lender can use in order to loan money on. Is your real estate agent doing that? No. Who does that? An appraiser does, correct. What about assistance with showings? Setting up showings for houses. Yeah, your real estate agent does that. What about condition of the property? Is your real estate agent qualified to be like, wow, that looks like that furnace is going to only last another year? You think they're qualified to do that? I will tell you, as a real estate agent, I've never gotten training on condition of property. They don't show me, hey, listen, this is how you tell if a furnace is in good condition. This is how you tell if a hot water heater is in good condition. This is how you tell if, the piping in the house is this or that, or the roof is qualified to kind of, hold water or whatever it is. We don't get any of that. No training. So is really your real estate agent qualified to comment on condition of property? No, I don't think so. What about contract acceptance? Who determines whether or not you all accept a contract? You guys do. I don't do that. Your real estate agent is not the one qualified to do that. What about contract drafting? Making up new provisions. Writing out things like, if so-and-so happens, then this thing happens and this thing happens. Am I qualified to practice law and draft contracts for you? Do I have training in law? Did I go to law school in order to get my real estate license? No, I am not qualified, and your real estate agent shouldn't be qualified to do that. What about contract preparation? Do I get training on how to fill out the 16-page state-approved contract so that you guys can buy houses? Am I trained on that? Yes. Yes, I am trained on that. So I can fill in blanks, and I can help you do that. If I need to change the terms of those agreements, am I qualified? No, that's drafting. Okay, so I'm not qualified to make changes to it. I am qualified to fill it out. Everyone understand the distinction? If you want to go and change how something is written, or you want to kind of modify something, you're like, I don't like the way that's worded. Let's go ahead and rewrite something. I can't do that for you. I'm not an attorney. But can I fill in the blanks and make it work the way we want it to work based on what's there? Sure, absolutely. What about home warranty? Am I able to actually warrant the house for you and say, hey, listen, anything breaks after closing, I'll insure that. I'll take care of it. What's that?
Can you sell that?
I don't get commissions on it. So no, I'm not allowed to sell it. But I can say, hey, listen, there's a home warranty company that's available and let you know that there are services like that for you to go buy, but I'm not brokering it. Okay? So I'm not paid from that. What about an improvement location certificate, which tells you where stuff is on the property? Basically, is the shed over on someone else's property line? Am I qualified to tell you that, oh, it looks like your property line is right here, so that's definitely on your property? Is that something I can do? No. Who does that? Surveyor. What about inspection? You go under contract, you need the property inspected. Do I go out there and I put on my inspector hat, I put on my little yellow helmet, I go up in the attic, I crawl around and say, oh, you got attic problems. Insulation's only 4 inches deep. Am I qualified to do that? No. What about inspector selection? Who selects who the inspector is? Do I go and I say, oh, you need to use Wes because Wes is amazing? Do I need to say that? No. Who determines the inspector? Can I give you a list and say, I've used these guys before, they're amazing? Sure. But who ultimately determines that? Yeah, you guys do. What about legal advice? Can I give you legal advice? Can I say to you, in my professional legal opinion, with all of my law school degree, am I allowed to say this is how I understand and interpret this? No. If you need legal advice, you need to go see an attorney. What about lender selection? Who determines which lender you use? Do I say you've got to go use so-and-so over at so-and-so because they're amazing?
You do.
I do not tell you that. You do.
No, but I know. But if you, sometimes the realtor has their lender.
That they say, we've worked with these 3 or 4. They're all really good. Why don't you call around and get quotes? Absolutely. But do I say to you, you have to use this person, otherwise I'm not working with you? No, not at all. List of home inspectors, I do that. What about list of lenders? I do that. What about loan interest rate or the loan term decision? Do you say, do you want to get a 15-year loan or do you want to get a 6% interest rate? Do I decide that for you?
The lender does.
Well, the lender and who else? Who gets to choose?
The buyer.
You, the buyer. You get to decide which one you want to pick. Okay? What about market evaluation? Can I tell you what the days on market is for certain neighborhoods or certain properties? Can I tell you property values are going up? Can I tell you this neighborhood's doing really well and these properties sold and this is what they sold for and this is what their square footage is? Can I do that? Yes, absolutely. Can I tell you this house is worth $440,000? Can I tell you that? No, because I am not an appraiser. Right? I'm not giving you an official appraisal of value. I'm giving you market conditions and market evaluation. It's a nuanced difference, but it's important for you to realize your real estate agent is not an appraiser. Appraisers have 2 years of mentor apprenticeship that they have to do. They have to have a degree. Yeah, it's non-trivial. And it takes them a full day plus of time to do. So for me to go and say, okay, let me go look at what's sold and give you an idea of what I think it might sell for, very different than this. This is a market evaluation of telling you the market's selling really quickly in your neighborhood, how properties are selling for this is what I think it probably would sell for and how we would market it. I can do that, but I can't tell you your house is worth $440,000. I'm not allowed to do that. What about Megan's Law, sex offenders? You're responsible for that. If you're concerned about it, look it up on the police department and see if there's any sex offenders living near you if you're about to buy a house. Okay? What's the hard thing about that law, though? Let's say you're about to go buy a property, you go under contract. You say, okay, I'm concerned about sex offenders. I've got small kids. So you go look it up and you say, good news. There's no sex offenders in a half-mile radius. So you decide to move ahead and buy the house. The day after you buy, someone decides to buy a house right next to you who is a sex offender. What can you do? You can move. Right? So that's the hard thing about this law. What about meth? Am I qualified to tell you meth is amazing, you should all do it? Am I qualified to tell you that meth was smoked or not smoked or manufactured in the house? Am I qualified to do that? No. No. Who does that?
Inspector.
Industrial hygienist, a type of inspector. Yep.
Isn't it disclosed sometimes on the listing
It can be, but here's what's interesting about the disclosure part. So if there was meth in the house, they had someone come in and they remediated it, and the remediation passed the new standard, do they have to disclose that it was once a meth house? They do not. If it's been remediated, it says right in the contract, if it's been remediated, you do not need to disclose. Now, as a practical matter, should you disclose? Because as soon as you go under contract, you're going to walk over to the neighbors, because that's what we recommend you do, and you're going to introduce yourself, and they're going to be like, oh, thank goodness someone's buying the meth house. We don't want the drug dealer there anymore. We really want to get some nice people in there. And you look like nice people. Okay? What about mold inspection? If I go look in the corner and I'm like, oh no, that's not mold. That's a scuff mark from a shoe. It's just a black scuff mark that runs the whole length of the floor, 6 inches up. Right? Am I qualified to say that? No. I am not qualified to tell you if there's mold. Who tells you if there's mold in the house? Yeah, you get an inspector done there, usually industrial hygienist. What about negotiations? Do I negotiate on your behalf? Do I go and I try to get you the best price and terms on the property? Do I try to go get you the best price and terms during inspections? Yes, this is my job, negotiations as a real estate agent. What about neighborhood crime? Am I responsible for neighborhood crime? Can I tell you what neighborhood crime is? Can I tell you, oh, this is a really low crime area? Is that okay? No. You need to go look that up, police department. What about new loan? Who issues you the new loan? Am I giving you the money to buy the house? No, your lender's doing that. What about structural issues? Oh, don't worry about that cracked brick. All brick that's 3 years old looks like that. Just push it back in. It'll be fine. Right? Am I supposed to do that? No, structural engineer does that. The survey, the improvement location certificate is where is stuff on the property? A survey is let's go do the exact lines, find the pins, and do everything exact. So a survey is like a more detailed version of an improvement location certificate. So who does this? Surveyor. Yep. What about taxes? Am I responsible for that? Property taxes? Can I give you an idea of where to go look to find that information? Sure. But am I allowed to tell you what the property taxes are and definitively and that they're not going to go up or they are going to go up? No, probably not. What about termites? How many people think we have termites here in northern Colorado? We do have termites here in northern Colorado. Yep, they're uncommon, but we do have them. I've seen termite damage on inspection reports before. What about title examination? You go under contract on a property, usually within the first few days, you get title work back showing you what the ownership and encumbrance of the property is and what the title exceptions are for issuing you title insurance on the property. Am I qualified to look at that and say to you, oh, you've got some problems with title. These are going to be issues for you. Am I qualified to do that? No. Did I go to law school and get trained on how to review real estate title work? No. Am I an attorney who specializes in title? No. So I am not qualified to do this for you. Now, we have a basic checklist we go through to check certain things, but that's not me. Does that make sense? Okay. So now that you can see what you're really looking for, we can see the factors that are going to be important for us for real estate agents. So these are the ones that are going to be important. Showing houses. Most people can show houses. As long as they're doing this as a full-time job and they've got reasonable availability, most people can show you houses, right? So that's probably not going to be one of the big ones, right? Would you agree? That's a relatively easy skill set to fill? Okay. What about contract preparation? Filling in the blanks on the real estate contract. Is that a skill that everyone has? No. I don't think so. I think that's one that you're going to want to find someone who's skilled at. Contract preparation is going to be one of the harder ones to find. What about list of home inspectors? Yeah, if they're in the business for any period of time, I think most people have a list of 3 or 4 home inspectors they've used that they're happy with. And if they don't, they can ask their managing broker. Hey, listen, I'm brand new. I haven't done my first transaction. Who do we recommend for home inspectors? And they can go ask somebody who's got experience in the business and give them a list. So I don't think this is going to be a big one. Might be a little bit, but not really. What about a list of lenders? Yeah, I have a list of lenders, but is that a skill set that's going to be hard to find? No. So in some ways, I want to say no, right? For like someone going out there and buying just a regular house off the street, maybe not so much that it's hard, right? But what about investors? What about somebody who's trying to do their 11th loan? Or somebody who's trying to buy a multifamily property as an owner-occupant? Or a mobile home, right? Or a fix and flip loan? Or a wholesale kind of transactional funding, dough for a day stuff? Is it going to take a special person to have that list? I think so. So depending on what you want to hire a real estate agent for, this one may be important. But for most people just trying to buy owner-occupant property, probably not, right? I mean, there's 3 or 4, there's lenders on every street corner. Go down College, right? I mean, basically go into any credit union or bank or something like that, you can get a loan for a house that you're going to live in most cases, okay? But the specialized one, yeah, maybe. You're going to need some kind of skill there. What about market evaluation? Is everybody good at knowing market stats, where to get them, how to interpret them, things of that nature? I don't think so. I think that if you're trying to sell a house, this is a pretty big skill, okay? And then negotiations. Are negotiations hard for most people? Yeah, I think to do it right, it's hard. And what's interesting about negotiations sometimes is you can do negotiations where you set up a situation where the next time you try to deal with the person on the other side of the table, it's going to hurt your next client. It's hard to do it in such a way that everybody leaves and they feel okay about it. Where your current buyer feels as though they had a win. But if you go and try to get another offer accepted right behind that one, the next client trying to buy something, where that person's still going to be willing to accept your offer. And not tell your seller, I worked with this guy before, he's a freaking nightmare. Don't ever work with them. I mean, they asked for like 90 million things in their inspection and like made us come back 37 times. It's not worth the headache. Don't bother accepting this one. The other offer is only $2,000 lower. Accept that one, right? You don't want an agent that's going to burn bridges for you. You want someone who's going to do something where you have a win, but it's not a win at the expense of the next transaction you want to do or the next buyer coming. Because if they're going to do that for you, they may have already screwed it with the other agent who you're trying to get the offer accepted on the previous transaction they did. So you could basically be putting yourself in a situation where you're not getting your offer accepted because they were really crazy on the offer before with the other buyer they had.
Comes down to reputation.
Reputation.
Relationship with other real estate agents.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so if you're looking at this, what are some of the hard ones to find? Contract preparation, maybe lists of lenders, negotiations, and market evaluation. So those are really the 3 big ones, right? And I would say contract prep, negotiations, and market evaluation are probably the 3 biggest ones. If you're on the sell side, this one's going to be a big deal. If you're not on the sell side, I think it's a little less of a big deal, right? For buying, they don't need to know the market evaluation quite as much. I think it matters, but not quite as much. So here's the interesting point for me, and I think I have a separate slide in this, but I'll bring it up now. The skills for somebody who is super detail-oriented and can go and fill out paperwork and stay on top of your dates and deadlines in your paperwork, is that the same type of person, when you visualize them in your mind, as the same person that can go out there and wheel and deal and negotiate and get things done? Do they tend to be, does the paperwork person be the same as like the negotiating salesperson type guy? Usually. So in some ways, these are at odds. You're trying to find someone who has these like really rare skill sets where they're both great at contracts and also great at negotiations. Tricky thing to find, okay? So it brings up an interesting discussion, which we'll talk later, which is teams. People working together where one handles one part of it, another one handles the other part, and they each have strengths that complement each other, okay? All right, any questions on what your real estate agent does to kind of set the tone for what we're looking for tonight when we're talking about finding a real estate agent? Good? Everyone's good? All right, cool. So working exclusively with one agent. Who was the one that was telling me they want to work with multiple agents? Okay, so here's the thing. So you're on the buy side, and you're thinking to yourself, well, if I have one agent looking for deals, I'll find a certain pool of deals because they have access to those, and they may have inside information on those, and they can kind of bring me those deals first. But if I have 2 people like that, I could potentially see twice as many deals. And if I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people that are all out there looking for deals, I could potentially see 10 times as many deals because I've got 10 times as many people working for me. That's the theory, right? Okay, so let's talk about that. So the buyer's agent is obligated to send you deals that match your criteria. So if you go and you sign an exclusive right to buy listing contract, which is the agreement we have that allows a real estate agent to work exclusively with a buyer, then they are required to send you properties that match your criteria. So in that description of what you write in, if you say to them, all properties within Fort Collins, Loveland, Windsor that are in the MLS, they are now required to send you those properties, okay? If you're working, now if they have a screaming good deal come up and that matches the criteria you have written down, are they required to send that to you? Yes, by writing. Now, if you have agreements with 3 agents and the same deal comes up, are all 3 of them now required to send that to you? Yes. Which one are you obligated to work with if you signed listing agreements with all 3 of them? Nope. All of them. Yep, that's the problem. So if you sign a listing agreement that says, these are the properties I want you to look for, and I'm working with you if you bring these properties, and all 3 of them send it to you, now you have an obligation to work with all 3 of them, which is a real problem. Okay? So what's interesting is this requires that they now show you any secret deals that they might have. But if you have, and you shouldn't sign agreements with more than one person. Where was I going with this? If you have 2 agents and you didn't sign these agreements, oh, here's where I'm going with this. So let's say you're like, okay, I put myself in a situation, I have 3 agents who are sending me these deals. Let me not get myself in a situation where I'm obligated to buy all 3 of them. Let me go ahead and not sign those agreements. Now, they are not obligated to send you the deals. But let's say these 2 I'm obligated to send deals to, and you are not signing an agreement with me. Who am I obligated to send them to first? These 2. So now you're getting sloppy seconds. Right? Because now these guys have first choice, and you do not. And if they skip over these 2, do these 2 have a problem with that? Yes, they do. Do you want to work with an agent who skips over the people that they are contractually obligated to send the best deals to work with you? So in some ways, you're saying, if you have any type of buyer agency agreement with any other clients that are sort of looking for the same thing I'm looking for, then even me telling you if you find these deals, you know that you're getting these kind of like seconds and thirds, stuff like that. Because it may not be you that they're coming to second. It may be the one that's done one deal with them before, but still has this kind of like, oh, if you bring me a deal, I'll do it with you sort of mentality. But now they go to that person first because they know that they've done a deal with them. And now you're at not even seconds, you're thirds. Does that make sense? Okay. So basically, the buyer's agency agreement says I need to promote the interests of the buyer with the utmost good faith, loyalty, and fidelity. So I have to, by obligation, if you sign an agreement with me to work with me, I have to do that first. Because I have to promote your best interests first. Okay? As you do multiple transactions, I can do some pretty amazing stuff for clients, like write strong letters to make case for seller accepting a deal. That's just another reason for doing that. So here's an interesting one with deals outside the MLS. So if we did an agreement and it said all properties in Fort Collins and Loveland inside the MLS, but I actually put out marketing and a deal came in off market, am I required to send that to Brandon? No, because basically our agreement is any deals inside the MLS in Fort Collins and Loveland. What if I said any properties in Fort Collins and Loveland and I didn't write inside the MLS? And now I got a deal that was off market. Am I required to show Brandon? Yes. Okay? So it's pretty weird stuff. Now, could you go out there and do like this agreement, in theory, could you go into a real estate broker and say, I'd like to sign an agreement with you, only properties that are off MLS. Do you find any off-market deals before they hit the MLS? You can bring them to me. Do you think a lot of real estate agents would sign that? No. I don't think so either. Okay. Yeah.
Because obviously, like, people who are looking to buy have different qualifications as far as if they're going to live in it, or if they're looking for a fix and flip situation and things like that. So wouldn't that, like, if you have a packet that's a fix and flip, I mean, you may be required to send it to them, but they're going to skip it right over.
They may.
You know.
Sure. And so they could then call you after that and show you the deal.
Okay.
Sure, right? Now, what's weird is, so let's walk through this scenario and see how it really plays out. So automatic email comes up of a really interesting fix and flip in the MLS. It gets sent to these 2 automatically. I happen to notice it. You told me I'm not willing to sign a buyer agency agreement with you, but if you bring me a deal, I would work with you and I'd look at property. So 4 hours goes by. These guys don't call me. I call you. I say, hey, listen, remember that thing we had, the conversation we had? There's this really interesting fix and flip deal. Would you like to go see it? And you're like, yes, I would. So we schedule for 2 hours from now to go look at a property. In the meantime, Brandon calls me. Do I got a problem? So I would be voluntarily stepping into all sorts of landmine situations if I have any type of volume of buyers going on, right? Because it gets really tricky. Now, something similar can happen, right? Deal comes out, both of these guys call me about the same deal. What happens there? I've got obligations to show it to both of them. Now, would I go, let's say Brandon goes and sees the property first, would I go to Elijah, hey, Brandon was just here. He's thinking 200. I think you got to beat that. Would I say that to Brandon? No. Right? What would I say to Brandon?
I hear that there's another offer or somebody else's.
If I have knowledge of it, I would tell both of them the same information. Any knowledge I have, I am required to tell them the exact same information. Right? It's going to be a hot property. I'm expecting multiple offers. I don't know of any offers right now, but if you did, these are the things that would strengthen an offer. You know, whatever you want to do, it's totally up to you. You name the number. I don't decide the offer price. You do. So it's really up to you. And I would tell both of them the same thing. Because, especially for me in this room, they're going to eventually talk.
And are you allowed, like, if they both want to put in an offer, but it's
Yes.
different monetary, so you're allowed to have like two?
Yes. It says it right in the exclusive right to buy agreement that I'm allowed to show the same property to multiple buyers. Yep. And it happens. Happens more often than you would think. Ask people in this room. If anybody wants to volunteer information, you are welcome to speak up. But yes, it happens. Is this correct? Pause for dramatic effect. All right, no one wants to share. Okay, cool. So the downsides. So really, if you're working exclusively one agent, I have very limited view of the marketplace. Even though I feel I serve real estate investors super, super well, I only see certain things, right? I'm not seeing every single property. And I'm not seeing all different types of properties. I tend to see a lot of really good rental properties because that tends to be what my buyers want to go and see. Okay? So each agent has a limited view of the world and of the marketplace, and so there are limitations by doing that. Each agent has different areas of expertise and knowledge levels. So a client of mine called the other day and said, hey, listen, James, I've got a really good friend of mine. They've got this horse property up on the north side of town that they really want to sell. It's probably $1 million property. I told them, you're amazing. You should call them right away. They want to list their property. I thanked them a lot. I appreciate you referring that to me. I called the other person, and I told them, I am not qualified to help you because I am not qualified to help them with horse property on the north side of town. That is not my core business. I don't know horse property, and I would be doing them a disservice. I would be insulting the person that referred me by taking on that listing and being incompetent to help them. So if you are working with somebody and they're like, whatever you need help with, I'll go ahead and do, oh, you want horse property? No problem. You want me to help you in Denver? Oh, North Denver? I'll drive down to Denver for you. They don't know Denver. They're not qualified to do that. Okay? So you gotta be super careful because each agent has different knowledge and expertise, and they should, according to the Colorado Real Estate Commission, only work within their knowledge area. They should not take on clients outside their area. Okay? They could bring in help and co-do a transaction with someone else who's qualified, but they should not do it solo if they're not qualified.
Or they can fully disclose that and you can still
Yeah.
voluntarily use them.
So that's the exception. If I go to, let's say Brian wants to go buy a horse property on the north side of Fort Collins, and I tell him, Brian, I'm not qualified. I don't know anything about horse property. He's like, but you are my go-to guy. You're my realtor. I don't care if you don't know horse property. I know you know contracts, and I know you're going to protect me, and I know you'll figure it out and get an attorney if you need help with something. I want you to represent me. It's like, okay, I'm going to give it to you in writing that I'm not qualified to help you, and you're going to tell me you still want me to do it. And then I would be happy to help Brian. But that's like, you got to disclose. And it's not enough to say, well, I haven't really done a horse property, but I'm happy to help you. That's not disclosing, right? Which you hear people do. Okay. So this is working exclusively with one agent. It's primarily talking about buying, right? Because when you're selling, you're not working with multiple agents. There is a way to do it. It's called open listing, but it's really, really uncommon. And basically an open listing on the selling side says, if I bring you a buyer, you will pay me a commission, right? Because if they sell the property and they sell it to someone else that comes, you don't have an exclusive with them, okay? So we're primarily talking about buyers when you're talking about working with more than one agent. What about working with multiple agents? The benefits are you might get more exposure to inside deals because you might have 3 or 4 or 5 guys that their buyers, or maybe they don't have a lot of buyers right now, are not doing those deals, and they may bring them to you and say, hey, I got this weird deal you told me you wanted to do. Because that's interesting to you, and now you get exposed to those. So inside deals might violate the fiduciary obligations to the seller by the seller's broker. So how do they find out about the deal? Is it their seller? Their seller says, hey, listen, here's this deal. I know we want to list it for $300,000, but I need to get this thing sold. So, if we don't sell it in the next couple days, I'm going to come down. I'll do $250. And then the agent says, hey, listen, Beth, guess what? My seller, he's motivated. He says if we don't get an offer soon, he's going to take $250. Is that okay? Who does that agent represent? The seller. They have an obligation. They have a fiduciary obligation to that seller to do what's best for them. And they just violated that to bring you the deal. So you got to be super careful.
How they get paid?
No, it is not how they get paid. That's a really good question. Who pays you does not determine who your obligation is to.
I got that. But
Yes.
morally, but in reality.
Contractually, it's not true. So according to the agreement, and it says very clearly, it is not who pays you that determines who you have fiduciary responsibility to. So basically, as an example, for a buyer, who do I get paid from? Technically, the seller's brokerage.
Okay.
Right? Because you're not paying me as the buyer. The seller is technically not paying me. The seller is paying the seller's brokerage, and the seller's brokerage is splitting the commission with me. Right? So I have a fiduciary responsibility to you as the buyer to give you the utmost loyalty. This is actually a quote. Promoting the interests of the buyer with the utmost good faith, loyalty, and fidelity. That is an obligation written in the agreement we signed together. Okay? But I'm not being paid by you. I'm being paid from the seller's brokerage.
But they're being paid.
By the seller.
Right. By the seller.
They're being paid by the seller. They're not being paid by you.
Unless I'm the seller.
That's right, if you're the buyer. Yeah. Yep. So it is not. Who pays you and who your obligation is to are not related. They're disconnected completely. Yep. All right. So people believe they may, did I cover this well enough? You guys understand how this can be weird, right? Yeah. Okay. People believe they may see more deals. In a practical matter, let me tell you what happens, because I've been doing this real estate investing stuff for a very long time. My family's been doing it since the 1970s. Let me tell you what tends to happen. So you come to a networking event or a class or something like that, and you see a real estate agent, and you start talking to, I'm doing these fix and flip deals and stuff like that, and they say, well, I'd love to work with you. And you say, great, you bring me a deal, I'll work with you. Oh, great, so I'll send over a buyer's agency. Well, I'm not going to do a buyer's agency agreement. If you bring me the deal, we can do a buyer's agency agreement for that deal. But if I do this other deal, I'm actually working with Joey over here. But if you bring me a deal, I'll do a deal with you. Right? Because that's what they say. And so what does the real estate agent immediately think? Oh, great. Why am I going to bother? This person's not loyal to me. I'd rather work with somebody who's going to be loyal to me, and I'm going to put in the effort and the time, and I know that they're going to buy a house with me after all this work, not that they're maybe going to buy a house with me, possibly. Now, are there people that are really hurting for a transaction and they'd be willing to do that? Sure. But most people that are busy, I'll just find someone else who's going to be loyal, and I'm going to work with them. Yep. So that tends to be how it is. Okay. Downsides. Because you have loose relationships with multiple agents, they tend to serve you as a last resort to the clients that are exclusively working with them. Right? They're like, you've gone through your girlfriend, your mistress, the next person in line. You're like, I need a hookup buddy tonight. I'm going to go down the list. It's like the last resort person. Okay? In fact, they probably are obligated to serve the exclusive relationships first according to their contracts. They may be bringing you deals where they represent the seller, not you. And even then it gets weird because they are required to represent the fiduciary obligations that they have to the seller, not to you as the buyer. And depending on your agreements, you could owe multiple broker's fees. So if you have an exclusive buyer agency agreement with someone else that says all properties in Fort Collins and Loveland, inside the MLS or outside the MLS, and someone brings you a deal that's off market inside Fort Collins, you may actually owe a commission to the person that brought you a deal where you said, I'll pay you a commission if that happens, and to the person you had your exclusive right to buy agreement with that covered everything. So you got to be super careful about that. All right? All right, cool. Any questions about this? Solo, multiple things. Did that sort of answer a lot of your questions? Yeah. It's kind of problematic in some ways, right? Super tricky. And it's hard, right? I get it. Yep, it makes a lot of sense to me. All right, so let's talk about how real estate agents get paid. So compensation for agents, it is not set by law. It is negotiable. So how much is a real estate commission? It's negotiated. So there is no set number. Now, most agents will tell you, I charge whatever it is. Seller's agent, it's not uncommon to hear, I charge 6%. And of the 6%, part of it goes to the buyer, part of it goes to the seller. I'm going to draw on the board here kind of how this typically breaks down. So 6% is completely arbitrary. It is not fixed in stone. It just happens to be a super common number, okay? 6%. So when you go and sell a house, the seller agrees to pay the seller's broker 6%. And then usually what happens is the seller's broker splits that, 3% goes to them, splits that 1.5% a lot of times to the seller's agent and 1.5% to the seller's agent's broker or brokerage. So in this case, insert name of brokerage, Keller Williams, Coldwell Banker, Remax, the group, whatever it is. And it's not always exactly this way, but it's very close. So the sellers agree to pay 6%. 3% is going to go to the seller's brokerage side. Half of it's going to go to the group or Remax or Keller Williams or Coldwell Banker, whoever it is. And the other half of it's going to go to the agent themselves. So on a $300,000 property, this agent just made $4,500. Okay? The brokerage made $4,500. And then over here, this other 3%, where does that go? This one, 3%. Where does this go? The buyer's agent. So this is the buyer's broker. So let's say, you know, someone over here at the group did their deal, and you brought in someone from Keller Williams who represented the buyer. Basically, 1.5% goes to the buyer's agent, and 1.5% goes to KW. Okay? That's the sort of idea. Now, this number is completely negotiable, right? This number, these are usually split 50-50, although they don't have to be. Okay? You could have a seller's broker say, listen, I'm only getting paid 5%, I'm only going to get paid 2%. And the buyer's agent, we're going to offer 3% because we want to see buyers bring their clients through. And if we start discounting this, they're probably going to say, I only have time for 4 properties today. This one's only paying 1%. Buyer, do you want to make up the difference? No. Then let's go not see that one. Let's skip it. Okay? So that tends to be what happens. But over here, it could be 2 and 3. Could be 2.5 and 2.5. Completely negotiable. What tends to happen down here, though, gets complicated. And I'll talk to you about this variations in common splits. Because let's say you're with, and by the way, this is purely speculative. I do not have inside information as to numbers. I just know like water cooler type talk. But let's say over here it is the group. Okay? The group actually might do a different model. They may say, we're not doing splits like this. Instead, this agent's going to pay us $40,000 per year, flat fee. And then you get to keep 95% of the commission. That's 3%, whatever it came down. And then 5% is going to go to corporate. So you're going to pay us a flat fee of $40K a year, and you're going to keep the overwhelming majority of the commission amount. So, 2.9 or 2.8 or whatever it is. Okay? So they may do a split like that. And, Keller Williams or Coldwell Banker, what they may say is this. We're going to do a split where we get 1.5%. You get 1.5% only until you pay us $18,000 or $20,000 for the entire year. At that point, for that year, for the rest of the year, you're on a 100% plan or the 97% plan, where you're getting the overwhelming majority except for whatever we have to send up to big corporate who does all the branding and stuff like that. Okay? So that tends to be how the splits work. Does that make sense? Have you guys ever seen this before? All right, cool. So you guys learned something new today.
So what happens when they do split? So somebody sells a property for you for a transaction fee?
Yeah, so instead of a percentage, it becomes a dollar amount. So it becomes 3% plus $2,000. And then the $2,000 becomes the split, and you're usually paying this to the buyer's agent still. Right? Because a lot of times you're doing that. Yep. So it becomes negotiated. Then this 2K goes down over here, and the 2K may be split half and half to the brokerage until they hit their cap, and then that's kind of falls away, and then they're on the 95% plan or whatever it is. Does that make sense? Okay.
Is 6% common across most states?
It is very common in a lot of states. There are some states that are being pushed down, where it's 5% or 5.5% or whatever it is. So we're seeing some downward pressure on that number. Yep. But it is very common. In some states with really low property prices, it's actually higher. So someone will charge a 7% or 8% fee. And there are some agents in this market that actually charge a 7% or 8% fee. So 6% is not the cap. And on really complicated sales, for example, business brokers, a lot of times they will not charge 6%, they will charge 10%, which includes sale of real estate and sometimes a business along with it. And so they will charge a 10% fee. And they'll offer co-ops on those. Okay? So, but 6% is super common, right? And you see this in the MLS. You know, the 3% is what they're paying to the buyer's agent. So there's an assumption that they're paying the other side because we don't have access to that data, right? Even I don't have access to it. I can't tell unless I'm on the other side of the transaction. I happen to see a copy of their settlement statement, which I don't always get. I don't know what the seller is paying their broker and the brokerage. And I definitely don't know what the brokerage split is between the agent and their company. I'm not privy to that information. Now, when a brokerage comes and they're like, hey, James, would you like to come work for KW or Coldwell Banker or the group or whatever it is, they may say to me, so here's our compensation plan, here's how it works, you pay us X number of dollars or what percentage or whatever it is, and here's the cap and here's what we give you. Oh, and in addition to this stuff, by the way, most of the time the agent's paying a monthly fee. So $50, $100, $300, $400 a month, whatever it is, to have access to a desk and a phone and stuff like that at the office. Okay? All right. So it's not set by law. It is negotiable. Now, you come to me and you say, James, you told me real estate brokerage commissions are negotiable. I want you to help me buy a house. I would like you to do it for 2%. What do you think I say? I'm not interested. Partially why?
Not enough skin in the game.
That's not the reason.
No.
Why? Why am I doing that?
You don't have to.
I don't have to because most of the time it's already pre-negotiated. The seller's paying 3%. So it's free to you no matter what. Right? You don't have to negotiate because the seller has already agreed to pay the cooperating buyer's agent 3%. So it doesn't matter for us because that's what I'm getting paid. And if for some reason they come to me and they say, listen, we're only paying 2.5, I may have a conversation with you and say, listen, this particular property is only paying 2.5, so are you willing to make up the difference to 3%? Or if you're a really good client, maybe I say to you, hey, listen, I've gotten 3% commission on the last 4 transactions with you. This one's a little bit less. I will do it for less if it's on this property. Okay? And so maybe I do that. But it's mostly 3% anyway. That's what the most common number offered in our local MLS is. So there's not a lot to negotiate. So if you tell me I only want to do 2, I'm like, yeah, that's just not good for me. Okay? Practical consideration, they're offering that. All right, so this is a common way to do it, and this is what's called the success fee. Okay? You can also do hourly. You can say to your real estate agent, instead of you getting 3%, I want to pay you differently. I want to pay you $250 an hour for all the time you're doing work on my file, all the time you're actually out there showing properties, all the time you're looking up properties for me, setting up stuff. I will pay you $250 an hour instead of this 3%. And basically at closing, whatever you got paid will be paid to you, or I'm going to pay as I go. And then basically anything left over that I didn't pay for you, I'm going to credit back to you as a credit from the real estate broker. We're going to say, we're going to reduce the commission. We're going to refuse it. Okay? That's one way to do it. Relatively uncommon, although I've done this before for clients in a very different situation. So I've done it when I was primarily helping buy, fix up, and resell clients, people that are doing fix and flips. And I was doing a lot of research for them in advance to find them deals that were hard to find. And what I told them is, you're going to pay me a retainer, you're going to give me $2,000, and I'm going to bill you at a certain hourly rate every time I do work for you. And then when we go buy a property, anything you've already paid to me, I will credit to you. So you're not paying anything more than the commission. We're just paying it differently. Because what I don't want to do is I do all this work for you and then you just don't buy anything. Okay? So that's how I set it up before. So hourly and retainer are uncommon. I've done both of them. And then you can do other. I will give you my car if you help me buy a house. You could do barter. It's hard to find someone willing to do that. All right. So what are some common amounts for each and above? Hourly, all over the place, right? Some people that do mountain property, I've heard, charge hourly and fuel. They will say, it's $50 an hour if we're going to look up properties in the mountains because it's a lot of drive time, and 75 cents a mile or something like that, and that will come off your commission. So they charge you hourly up front. Some common amounts for that success fee we talked about. Most common is probably 3%. It can be whatever it is you negotiate though. And then buying and selling are different, which we covered this, right? When you're selling a property, in most cases, you're paying the fee for both the buyer and the seller. your 6% is coming out of there, or 5% or 7%, whatever it is you're charging. Make sense? Does anyone have any questions on this? Sort of some inside what's going on. Splits with different companies, I talked about that, right? All right, no other questions? So what if these cost the same? What if this really nice super sports car costs the exact same amount as this piece of crap junker that's probably needs to be just wasted and taken for parts and stuff like that? What if they cost exactly the same? Well, when you're talking about buying real estate, they do. If you get the best, highest end buyer's agent real estate broker that is super amazing, sports car style real estate broker, it costs the same as if you get a brand new person who's never done a transaction before. They have, 168 hours worth of training. That's the training in order to get their real estate license. Never been out done a showing besides with you. You're still paying the 3%. And that's what's weird about our marketplace, is that you've got people that are brand new, well-intentioned, they mean you the best, they're very ethical, they're very honest, they're very hardworking, but they just are not experienced, And then you've got somebody who is going to get paid the exact same amount, who has got tons of experience and expertise and can really help you. So they do cost the same, which is really hard and kind of weird to think about. Any questions on that? That make sense to everybody? All right, working with sellers agents as a buyer. So who had that example? They were gonna go talk to the sellers. Oh, that was you too. You got all the slides tonight. You went and you talked to your Zach went and talked to the listing agent for a property that was for sale and ended up buying the property from that.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's how we got her name. That was already under contract. So then she just said, oh, but I have this other listing over here or something, and it worked out. So that's just how we got the contact.
That's how you found your agent. Okay, cool. So here's the interesting thing that happens a lot of times and why people think, I'm not going to go sign an exclusive right to buy listing contract with an agent to help me buy. They think to themselves, what I'm going to do instead, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the agent that has the sign out in front. I'm going to call them because obviously they want to sell the property and they don't have to then pay a commission. So what I'll end up doing is I will end up saving 3% of the price of the property because I'm going to call on the sign in the yard and they're not going to have to pay the commission. Right? That's what they think. No one's ever thought that before? Yeah, you think it all the time. Okay, so here it is. John's going to play seller. I'm going to play the real estate broker. Beth's going to be the buyer. So Beth calls. Ring, ring, ring. Hi, this is James. She says, hey, I'm interested in that property you have listed at 1234 Main Street. And since I don't have a buyer's agent, I expect to get the property for 3% less. Basically what you're saying. But you're not saying that exactly on the phone. But you're saying, I'm going to come in a little bit low. You don't have to pay the 3% commission. So I should be able to get it for 3% less. Okay? So we're in conversation. You're the seller. You're like, hey, listen, they don't have a buyer's agent. That's good for me. Because now I don't need to pay the buyer's agent's commission. So I'm going to get 3% more. That's what John's thinking. Right? I don't now have to pay a buyer's agent. I'm going to net 3% more. I'm the real estate broker. I'm like, sweet. I've got the seller. I'm going to get 3% from him. I now found the buyer. I'm going to get 3% from her. Who do you think wins this? Why? Why do I win?
Because you're getting your 3 and 3.
Well, she thinks she's going to get a 3% discount.
Which she thinks it's not.
And he thinks he's going to save 3% because now the agent coming, I obviously represent him. So I'm trying to get him the best deal. And she doesn't want, she's going to pay the full price and he's going to get 3% more. That's what he thinks.
Right?
So why do I win?
Because it's going to end up being 6. Are you the listing agent?
I'm still doing both of the work, right? I'm doing all the work for the buy side. I'm doing all the work for the sell side,
Okay.
right? But really, why do I win?
Wait,
Because now you're representing both.
Yep, but why do I win? Why do?
Your marketing is awesome.
No. I win because the paperwork that you signed says you're paying 6%, not 3% in most cases, right? So most of the time, almost always,
Yeah, right.
you're basically saying, I'm agreeing to pay 6%, and if you have a buyer's agent come in, we're going to co-op and pay them half of that. That's what you're agreeing to. So the paperwork we have says you're paying 6. It doesn't say we're paying you 3, and we're going to pay the other to the other person if they come in, and it's not the same. So the paperwork is in my favor as the broker. Not yours and not yours. And for you, you're even doubly screwed because who do I represent in the transaction? I represent the seller. And so we're saying, hey, I think she's motivated. Let's tell her it's $5K above what she was asking. Right? Because I'm not representing you. So you're in the worst situation of all of them by calling on the sign in the front of the yard. You have no representation, you have no one to explain things for you, you have no one looking out for you, and you're not going to save the 3%.
I actually called his bill before, and then went and met him, and then I was like, well, obviously, like, I'm going to tell my realtor about it so that she can check it out, and I'll just pay her on the side. And the owner just looked at me and said, why? Why do you need a realtor? And I was like, I'm out.
Yeah?
Why do you not want me to have a realtor?
Yep. So we just discussed working with the seller's agent when you call on like a yard sign. So everyone, the seller, the buyer, and the agent, all three of us individually think we're getting it. You think you're getting a discount, you think you're saving 3%, and I have the paperwork that says I'm getting paid twice. Okay? So what does the paperwork say? In most cases, unless you handwrite in something else in your listing agreement saying that if you find the buyer, I'm paying you less, then I'm getting the full 6%. And it's not written that way by default, I will tell you that. Okay? All right, recommendations. So now we're back to, I've kind of given you some inside scoop as to how things work, what you're looking for. So how do you go find the agent? Recommendations, I think, is a good way. Seek out recommendations from people in the business. Just because your pet groomer really likes their real estate agent is not a good reason to use their real estate agent, in my opinion. You really want someone who has some insight into how that real estate agent works in the industry. Lenders, title companies, and if you can get a recommendation from another real estate agent, that's probably a pretty good one. So for example, with the horse property, my friend calls me, says, hey, call this, my friend with the horse property. I call up the horse property owner, and I talk to him on the phone, and I'm telling them, I am not qualified. However, I'm in the business. Let me give you some insight as to who I would recommend you use. Someone who is qualified to help you. In that situation, I'm a real estate broker recommending other people that I've done transactions with or I think are qualified to help them with horse property. Is that a pretty good recommendation? Yes, right? So if you can get in a situation where someone will be honest with you and tell you, hey, listen, I am not a good real estate investor type agent. I deal mostly with farmland or whatever it is, then you should really use this person. That's a really strong recommendation to get. So if you don't have that, if they're in a really big office, if they have a really big office, you can call the managing broker, and in large enough offices, the managing broker is usually not doing transactions. In small real estate offices, the managing broker is probably still doing deals because they're not making enough money from managing the office. Okay? But if it's big enough, their full-time job is to kind of help agents that have had transactions going on and kind of manage them. And so they have unique perspective. They're looking at the performance of 100 agents. They know how well they're performing, what they're doing good, what they're doing bad, and what their specialties are. And so if you call up a managing broker and you say to them, so here's my situation. I'm looking to buy long-term rental property, buy and hold. I really want to work with an agent who understands that market, understands rents and numbers and how to analyze deals, can do a deal analysis and help me find properties that are good long-term rentals. Do you have an agent in your office that specializes in that? That is a much better recommendation than just calling cold or getting a recommendation of so-and-so agent is good. Because that may be good in the sense of, $700,000 owner-occupant properties on lakefronts. Not necessarily what you're looking for. Okay? If they don't spend time listening to what you need, that's a big red flag for me. They're just like, oh, I can refer someone to you. And they don't really ask you for details and hand select somebody, that's a problem for me. Okay? All right, any questions on recommendations? Does that make sense? Kind of like how this works psychology-wise and why you'd want to call up managing brokers? Now, Tammy tells me, sometimes we get clients saying, hey, I want to go buy a mountain property. And we don't have a really good mountain property person for every single mountain property area. So Tammy will go call up managing brokers from these small small companies up in the mountains, and she gets them on the phone, she explains what she's looking for, and the managing broker says, I can help with that. That's hard, right? Because you don't know how good they are. Tricky. All right, designations. Do you ever see a real estate agent have a business card and they have like the alphabet soup after their name? They've got 90 letters with, you don't know what they mean? You ever see this? Okay. Anyone know what any of them mean? As any agent actually took the time to say to you, so I am this designation, which means I specialize in blank or I had training in blank. Anyone ever do that to you? Okay, yeah, see, that's the problem. No one does it. So designations, what do they mean? So if you can go to this website, which is the National Association of Realtors, designations and certification, just search for NAR designations, you can see a list of them. It'll actually explain what all of them are. And a lot of them are just special classes they've had to take. So someone who is I'm making this up, someone who is a foreclosure specialist or a short sale specialist may have taken an 8-hour class on how to deal with foreclosures or short sales. So they've taken a class on how to do this, okay? So in my opinion, most of the designations are just, I took a class and I have some education on that. They're not experience-based. There's one major exception. It's called the CRS, Certified Residential Specialist. And while it's not perfect, it's better than just I took a class. Because in order to get the CRS designation, you need to have a certain number of transactions you've done. So if you see someone with the CRS thing after their name, they've done one of these things. So they've either done 75 transactions within 5 years, 25 million in sales within any 5 years. That's one of the qualifications. Plus they need 32 credits from elective stuff, and 32 from elective and 32 from the CRS education for a total of 64 credit hours. 64 hours of additional education. So now you've got someone who has a CRS designation, they've had at least 75 transactions worth of experience, and they have a bunch of extra classroom time. Is that probably better than just your average agent off the street? Yeah. Yes, I agree. So this is one of the few designations I would tell you means something to me. Just out of curiosity, how many transactions do you think the average real estate agent does? Is 75 a lot? How many do you think a typical agent does?
75 is a lot.
Yeah, how many do you think is normal for an agent to do in a year?
12.
12? Did you say something, Tam?
I just said per year. I was qualified.
Per year, yeah, per year. 6? Yeah, so I will tell you the numbers are pretty scary actually. And I'm trying to quote the National Association of Realtor stats, but it was like an agent in their first 10 years of business, the median income was like $30,000 or something like that, which if you're making, $8,000 a transaction or so, it's probably like 4 transactions a year. Okay? Which is crazy. Okay? So, 75 transactions any 5 years, 20, or option B, 25 transactions with no time limit. So if you're in the market for 20 years and you do 1 transaction or 1.5 transactions a year, you can still get this designation. So make sure your CRS guys are young, right? Don't go find a 70-year-old CRS guy. Or 8 million with a minimum of 10 transactions within 2 years. And for that one, you need more credit hours in order to get 80 total. And then there's some other ways to qualify. If you're like a manager, you have to oversee 400 transactions or something like that. So the idea, though, is if you actually require the agent you're working with to have a certain number of transactions and a certain amount of extra education, I think that's good. Okay? Any questions on, I had my joke up here. Should I make a certified nomad specialist designation? Sure. And like approve people and say, okay, if you've taken these 13 classes or something like that, then you can actually be a certified nomad specialist and put the CNS thing after your name. That's my joke. Yeah.
Is there a way to verify if someone has proper CRS certification?
Yeah, they actually, I think the website will allow you to verify if somebody has it on CRS.com or whatever it is, or it looks up CRS. But then they also are not allowed to use it in their business card unless they're qualified. So there's they get caught, they'll get in trouble. I don't know what the deal is, but. So here's an interesting question. So James, do you have CRS kind of thing? I qualify for the transactions, I will tell you that. I qualify for the education, I will tell you that. So do I have it? I do not. Why don't I have it? It's probably true. I don't know how much it is. Do you know how much CRS is?
I don't. You probably have to take specific CRS classes of it.
I have taken some of them. I don't know if I have all 32, but I'm pretty close.
But if you pay money just to stamp.
Sure. Yeah. But why don't I have it?
Yeah.
Why don't I have CRS?
You're too old.
I'm too old. That's funny. Until today, did you guys even know it existed? Would you come up to me and say, listen, are you CRS? No, it's not my business, right? I'm not getting people looking me up to find out if I have CRS qualification. I'm not getting business that way. So for me to do it didn't make a lot of sense. What's that?
Who cares?
Right, exactly. And that's what for most of the time, I think that's true. But for us going to look at a market, this becomes an interesting way to screen because I have insight into what's going on. You guys don't have that insight, but I do. So we're going to pick a property, someone to sell a property in another state. This might be a really good first screening criteria. Let's only pick 5 guys that are CRS to start our interview with.
Actually, I don't think I would use that.
Yeah, I think I would. I would use it because I think it actually is a good way. The other thing you're going to do is you're going to look up sales transactions, right? So we're going to get to that next, but this is another way to do it. Okay. All right, sales volume, which is next. So look for agents that have experience and expertise in the specific area you are looking for. You could go find an agent. There's an agent in this market. He's probably, by transaction volume, he's probably one of the #1 agents in our marketplace, but he is not specialized. He's all over the place, and he has a team, which I'm going to get to in a minute too. So it is not a specific area of focus. So if you want to go and find horse properties, not me. You're going to want to look at somebody who has horse property transactions and sales volume there. You're going to want someone who's doing fix and flip deals if you want that. You're going to want to find someone who's doing buy and hold deals or nomad properties if you're doing that. Specifically in the area, you're looking for. Not all agents, even me, post all their sales. So let me show you stats here. So I'm going to pull up my Zillow profile. I think, if it works. And I'm going to show you just my sales volume so you get a feel for this. But I'm going to tell you that even I don't go, and by I mean even Tammy doesn't go and update our profile to show how many transactions we really had. Okay? So on here, if you're looking at someone's profile to find out what they have, you basically go to their profile on Zillow, where I'll show you the one on Realtor, and it shows you, we have 32 reviews. There were 23 sales in the last 12 months. I will tell you that's low. Okay? We've probably done 23 this year in like 2017, right? Yeah. So there's that there. There's kind of, they talk about what their specialties are. It shows you the number of transactions there are. It shows you active listings. And then it shows you some past sales. And it shows you the properties. So if you're concerned about, does my person actually do the types of deals that I want to do, let's take a look. I mean, are they doing condos that I want to buy? You look, see if they have condos. Are they doing, really expensive single-family homes? Are they doing, investment rental properties? What are they actually helping their clients buy? And you can go drill down and see. And see what their transactions are. Are they helping buyers or sellers? What are they focusing on? You could read through their reviews and get a feel. Okay? So I just wanted to show you that. And I will tell you, we do not enter all ours in, but some people don't enter any in. Okay? But if it's a ghost town,
Or they use another site. I mean,
yeah.
there's a lot of different sites out there. We know a lot of people look at Zillow. Even though we don't necessarily condone Zillow that.
That's correct.
Been around James for long enough, you've probably heard that.
Yeah, and so here's the other one. So this is Realtor.com. This is my profile on Realtor.com. I'm a member. What's that?
That you have not claimed, apparently.
Yeah, but apparently it's mine, right? I don't have any sales on here. If you went to Realtor.com and you tried to say, how many transactions did James do? I'm thinking about hiring him. I look like I'm inexperienced. I've never done a transaction, which is not true. So just be aware of that when you're doing that. Okay. All right, so online reviews and testimonials. I showed you those when we went to the Zillow site. It's sort of at the bottom. You can see what people have said about working with them. So I'm a skeptical guy. If someone says, James was great, that's really not a great testimonial / review. Would you agree? Having some details in there about things that happened on the transaction, references to Qdoba, references to negotiations, or things like that are detail specific, I think that adds a lot more credibility. Now, I don't use these as well, but I should do more stuff with them. I could put them in, other things. We could put them on the website for Meetup. But basically, I have them in my book, in my newsletter. I feature one in the newsletter every month. And then at the front of the book for clients is a whole bunch of them. It's like 4 or 5 pages of them. So here's another good point. So let's say there's a very active real estate agent in town whose names I will not name, who does a ton of transactions. But he has a staff of 4 buyer's agents, full-time contract, kind of dates and deadlines person, someone who kind of manages the signs and the lockbox and everything. So really, it's a team of 9 people running this whole thing. And let's say they do 90 transactions a year, which is a lot. Okay? So they may have on their stats page that they do 90 transactions a year, but it's 90 transactions spread out over X number of people. And so you got to be careful about that, because they'll use stats and they'll say, I'm the #1 agent in Northern Colorado, when really it's them and 15 other people. Okay? And there's some weird, interesting problems that happen, which I'll talk about here in a second, about groups versus solo people. So let's talk about specialization now. Experience and sales volume should be in the area you're looking to buy, sell, or lease in. It should be in your geographic area. People should not be going to markets where they're not experienced in, according to the Colorado Real Estate Division. They should not be going, if someone's up here in Fort Collins and they don't know Denver, they should not be doing transactions in Denver. Someone in Denver should not be helping their buyer buy something in Fort Collins if they're not experienced in Fort Collins. You're not qualified. You don't know the nuances of the marketplace. You don't know that there's occupancy limits in the city of Fort Collins. You don't know the local rules and laws and things of that nature, so you should not do it. You're not qualified. So be super careful if somebody wants to help you go outside their normal area. And it should be the same types of properties that you want to work with. Okay? There's a small group of agents that focus on residential multifamily, residential single-family home as investment. I think the only thing I was trying to say there was if you're trying to buy, 4plexes, 5plexes and up, there's really not a lot of people operating in that space that are qualified. There's a very small number, because there are so small number of those transactions that happen that if you're really trying to do those, there's only a very small group of us. Okay. Solo versus team. So pros and cons for each. So, do you want to go work with somebody who is a one-man show or one-gal show who is going to be working exclusively with you, and you're never going to get handed off and have anyone else take over anything? Or are you going to go work with a team of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 additional people that are going to handle different roles of your transaction? And I personally see pros and cons to each of those. The challenge we had at the very beginning was we're trying to find someone who has those two skills, the negotiation skill and the contract skill, or vice versa, whatever I just did with my hand. So those two skills, and they're kind of opposing, right? It's hard to find one person with both those skills. And so having a team where one is really good with the paperwork, and that's primarily what they do, that's a good thing. And the other person is primarily the negotiator, and that's a good thing. And you kind of rely on two people's strengths to do that. Plus, if one of them has to go out of town to Chicago for some reason, the other one is still there to handle all your stuff when they go away. Okay? It becomes trickier when they're husband and wife. Right? Now, here's the other downside of the multiple team thing. So you have a team of 3 people, and the one person was supposed to be handling the contracts, and they decide, I'm actually going to go get my license, and I'm going to go work for myself and make more money, because the team people tend to get paid less, and so they're going to decide to go solo. But the last transaction you did, they had that power team where all 3 of them were amazing. But now, one of them's gone, and they replaced them with a brand new person, entry level. $12 an hour person who has no experience. Is that good for you? No. That's problematic, right? So I'll probably tell this story again when we do property management class, but I hired a property manager who was like a one-person show, and she was amazing. She was taking care of the properties, doing a great job, doing everything she was supposed to do, and then her mom got sick, and everything went downhill. And I had, I don't remember, 10, 12 properties, something like that, managed with her at the time. And do you go and pull 12 properties from her when her mom is sick, when she's not doing well? Is that like a cool thing to do? No. And so it's this really weird thing where you're dealing with one person. When they're doing great, it's amazing. When something happens, they're the only person there. And so you're relying on them exclusively. And sometimes it's very awkward to pull the business from them in the middle of a transaction, or when you've got the reason why things are falling apart is very personal. Okay. It's incredibly likely to find one person with paperwork negotiating skills. Makes the case for having different people. We talked about that. Risk that team members have changed, giving you inconsistent service. We talked about that. And the risk that a solo person has personal issues preventing them from doing the work. So you can see this pros and cons. So I'm not sure I would say exclusively I would only work with a team or I would only work with a solo person. I see benefits to both sides. And just realize what your risks are going in if you're going to work with a solo person versus a team. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. All right, agent broker specifics. I think this is actually, I have the interview stuff. How am I doing on time? Oh, that's pretty good. All right, so agent broker specific benefits. So some brokerages in town have resources. They have cool stuff. Some agents in town have cool stuff. They have specific things. So as an example, I'm not picking on anybody, but the group has an amazing magazine. Has anyone seen the magazine, The Source? Great resource, right? If you're going to sell your property, that is a big plus. To have all that extra circulation of advertising with a nice glossy magazine that they put out once a month with some articles in there, it is a really good additional marketing tool that if you're listing your property with an agent from the group, that's going to be a plus for you. Okay? Now, do all agents at the group use The Source? If you go list a property with every single agent at the group, are they automatically every single time going to put your property in The Source magazine? No. So the agent may choose or choose not to list it in there. But it is a good plus if they're doing it. Yeah, it costs money. It's part of their ongoing fees and probably an extra fee in order to put it in there. Okay? So that's like a plus for the group. Like Keller Williams, the company, the corporate, big nationwide Keller Williams, has the Millionaire Real Estate Investor book. You know the blue book that we're always telling you is a great thing to read and we kind of teach a class on it? The company itself, the founder, Gary Keller, wrote that book with a co-author, and he encourages his agents to teach real estate investor classes based on the blue book. Great book, great idea. But the agent, it's up to the agent as to whether or not they want to implement that and teach those classes. Okay? So there's resources some of these have. They also have a book called Hold about buying and holding properties like rentals. Okay? So they have these resources to do that. For me, it's this. Northern Colorado Real Estate Advisor book, I give it out to clients, and the Nomad book, which we give out to everybody. Nomad book's like an intro book. So I have my own version of some of this stuff that people do. Office space. Tammy and I work out of our own home. But with other real estate companies in town, the group is a great example actually. Their buildings are beautiful. If you've never been inside of a group building, they're super nice. Okay? So you get a little bonus if that's important to you. If going to a building and sitting at a table and having a nice solid table and them greeting you and putting your name on the sign when you come in, if that's important to you, great. It's a plus for you to do. For some people, it's not important. Referral network, your dream team. So a brand new agent who doesn't have their sewer scope people, their inspector people, their mortgage people in case the loan falls through and they need something to close right away, or a portfolio lender, or all these different team members, the dream team members you need in order to do transactions. If you don't have that, that's a problem. There are some agents that have amazing Rolodexes and referral networks. So I think that's an important factor for everybody. Marketing collateral. So some of the stuff that Remax, Keller Williams, and Coldwell Banker, and the group, and I'm not trying to leave anyone out, but some of these big nationwide companies, they produce some really slick stuff. Some really good marketing materials that they visually explain the buying process, or they give you some really cool things. My version of it is in my book, but they have some really cool marketing collateral. And for some people, that's important, and it's good to use. Classes, so the group teaches a Wake Up Money class. It's like an intro to investing about buying rental properties. Great class if you could take it. So I've heard. We do NCRAG and Nomad classes, but that idea that some people are going to teach you stuff. They're going to go above and beyond to kind of help you learn whatever part of the business you need to learn. I think that's important. Then the last one is processes and checklists. So I am a huge believer in checklists. Tammy and I operated nuclear reactors before we started doing real estate. And we didn't do anything on a nuclear reactor without a checklist. It just doesn't make sense to do that. So we came to the real estate world. We looked around for great checklists and processes, could not find them. And I looked hard. So we went and we since built our own. It's like a 26-page checklist without all the additional documentation, just single line item checklist stuff for the buying process. But it's not enough to even have the checklist, because Keller Williams may issue somebody here's your closing checklist, 19 things you need to do for your closing, but if the agent's not using it, it doesn't matter. You got to have somebody who has a checklist and uses it. So it's important for you to use those. Okay. So now I'm going to cover some possible questions, time permitting, that you might want to ask your real estate agent if you're going to sit down and talk to them. So market knowledge, I'm going to kind of just run through some of these and tell you what I think are red flag sort of answers or kind of good answers. So market knowledge. I'm looking for properties to invest or live in. Are there certain neighborhoods I should be considering? That's that market knowledge component that your agent should have. In those neighborhoods, how many properties sold in the last 3 months? Transaction volume, kind of look for that. Not necessarily they sold that did sell. So they have a feel for how fast the market's moving. Are prices in those neighborhoods going up, down, or holding? Are people making full price offers, or are they getting below market offers accepted? And how much below? Kind of important stuff to know. Wouldn't you agree? If your agent can't answer that, it's a problem. What is the average days on markets in those neighborhoods? What are rents? If you're buying an investment property, you need to know what rents are. How many months of supply are there at our current buying rate in those markets? How does that compare with 6 months ago or a year ago? And are there any neighborhoods or markets that have great investment opportunities right now, and why are those good? Okay, those are kind of market knowledge ones. Here's the credentials questions. Do you have any special designations or courses that you've taken related to our real estate business? So if you want someone that's good with foreclosures or short sales or stuff like that, you may want to ask them, because there are special designations for that they may want to specialize in. I do not have those designations, but I've done plenty of short sales and foreclosures. But so just use that as a kind of tool. What do those train you on, and how does that help me? Is your license current with the state? You may ask how you can check that independently with the state as well. So most people that are doing business, it's probably going to be fine. But if you feel in any way sketchy, that's a good question to ask. Do you have E&O insurance? Is that up to date? You may want to ask how you can independently verify this with the insurance company as well. Tammy pointed out to me that in order to have your license active in the state of Colorado, it is mandatory that you paid your insurance policy for the year.
You can't cancel it, like, it's non-refundable, it's a whole year, there's no proration, so they can't cancel it if it goes away.
Yeah. Experience, that's a big one for me. Are you a full-time real estate agent or real estate broker? If they're part-time, I'd pass. I mean, they cost, especially on the buy side, they cost the same, guys. Why would you go with a part-time person that's not experienced? How long have you been full-time? When did you get started in the business? What did you do before you started in real estate sales? Do you represent me as the buyer or the seller if we work together? This is a question about agency and who the agent actually represents. So I want to know who they're representing in the deal. What percentage of your business by number of people, not transaction size, is with investors or owner occupants? So if you want someone who specializes in investors, you want to go tell them, you want to go ask them, so what percentage of your business is investors? For me, it's got to be 80% plus. How many transactions did you do last year, this year? How does that compare with your expectation to do this year? So they should be able to tell you. Remember we went around the room, we talked about what's reasonable for number of transactions, right? Most real estate agents struggle. I mean, just the sheer numbers of it. If you look at the median income of real estate agents, it's like $30,000 a year. So it's relatively low. So, for somebody who's a little bit more experienced in the market, you definitely want them doing over 6. I will tell you, just to kind of get a feel for what our market is, we were the number 3 buyer's agent in our market last year, and we did 44 sides. Is that right? Something like that. So if you want to get a feel for like what the high end is of what someone might tell you, there's a kind of benchmark for that. Are you the top producing person in your office? Do you prefer to work with investors or owner occupants, and why? Investor experience, do you own investment property yourself? Here's the interesting thing about this. So do you think Tiger Woods probably a dated reference now, but do you think Tiger Woods' golf coach is better than Tiger at golf? Is the skill set of being amazing at golf the same skill set Tiger needs in order to get better at golf from his coach? They're different skills, right? The skill of how to coach and make someone better is different than the skill of being the amazing golf person yourself. Okay? The skill of actually helping someone buy a house and see through the transaction is a slightly different skill set than owning the properties yourself. So realize they're not directly correlated, but you do want someone that has knowledge of the investment properties. You want them to understand what makes a good investment, what makes not a good investment, and what you should kind of look for. What's your primary strategy? Buy and hold, fix and flip, wholesaling, or something else? How do you find most of your deals? If we're both investing in similar ways, how do I know you won't take all the best deals? How do you know? But the contract doesn't prevent me from buying the deal either, right? You and I go look at a duplex. You put an offer in. I could put an offer in that property. I'll tell you, I do not. But I could, right? It would not, actually. The agreement we have says that I can show other buyers that property. Now, would I do that to you? I would not.
I think that's a gray area because you have knowledge of his offer.
Right.
Yeah, that may be true.
I think you'd have to disclose to him that you're also putting, that would be.
We don't do that.
It's never happened. We've never done that.
Yeah. So that is not my policy to do that. If all my clients decide to pass on a property and I still want it, I would consider buying it. But I would never try to steal a property out from underneath somebody. Yep. So yeah, it's tricky. How do I know you won't take all the best deals? One of the arguments is Every time the deal comes on, I automatically send it to you. So it's not like I'm screening them before you get them either. You will have access. You tell me all the deals you want, we'll send them to you automatically. I'm not holding back anything from you. If you work with other investors, how do you know I won't show the best deals to another client? I tell you, I send an email to everybody. Everybody gets the deals. And then if you want to see it, we go see it. And I'm very open about, I tell everyone the same thing. This is what I know. This is what I think you should do. Not numbers-wise, but this is how you improve your offer. Are most of your investor deals bank-owned or REO properties? Are they mostly short sales? Are they mostly sold by motivated sellers? Are they all in the multiple listing service? Financing. Do you feel part of your expertise you offer is the ability to assist with putting the financing together for buying the property? Do you know lenders that could do financing for these deals? Do you know specifically about financing programs for real estate investors? How many loans can a real estate investor get in their own name? Do you know about loan programs for first-time home buyers? What are the current rates for owner-occupant loans? What are the current rates for investors? What type of documentation will I need to process the loan? How much are the most lenders requiring as down payment? Are there programs that require less? How much less? What's the minimum? Basically, we teach like a 2-hour class on financing where we answer all these questions for you. Brand name. Why did you decide to work with this particular company? So if I worked for Keller Williams or the Group or Coldwell Banker or Remax or any of those other brands, why did I choose to work with them? Because they have amazing buildings. Because they have a great magazine they can send out. Because the founder of the company wrote this amazing book and I want to be able to teach classes. Or they have, another book that teaches people how to be real estate agents. There's a great book by Keller Williams on how to be an agent. So why did I come to work for the company? Maybe it's their great marketing collateral. What is the advantage of me working with you at this company? Well, you can come in this great building when you close twice. Once for signing the paperwork originally and once at the end. Are there any companies in town you'd rather not or outright refuse to work with, and why? There are some companies in town that are kind of sketchy, and every time I see them, I'm like, why are we going to do this again? How does your company rank in terms of number of transactions completed in our marketplace? Fees. How do I pay for your service? Remember we talked about this? Is there an upfront fee? In most cases, there are not. What happens if I do not buy a property with you? Is there a minimum commission percentage? If so, what is it? Is there a minimum commission dollar amount? If so, what is it? So by the way, I used to put in, do we still do that? Do we have a minimum dollar amount for our stuff? So I used to put in a minimum dollar amount. It was like a minimum of $2,000, and that was to cover us in case there was like a $60,000 property or something like that. So we used to do this. We don't see many anymore, which is why we don't do that anymore. But early on, we did. What happens if we find a property where the seller is not offering a commission? Will you show it to me? How would you get paid on that? Good to have that conversation up front. Okay? And personality. Well, most of the personality-related screening is done based on your interactions. These are some general questions to get a feel for who they like to deal with. What's your favorite type of client to work with? Do you prefer to work with engineer analytical folks or more sensitive emotional folks? And Tammy was laughing at me because she says that's a weird question. I think it's like a legit question. Team, do you have any assistants or staff that works with you that I will be interacting with? What would I be dealing with you directly on, and what would I be dealing with them on? Are they licensed assistants in all areas that I'm aware of? Unlicensed assistants are very limited in what they can do with clients. So you can't have a licensed assistant doing things like negotiating, showing properties, things like that. All right, agreement. Would we have a formal written agreement if we work together? And can we go over the details, and can I keep a copy of it to review? How long would the agreement be for? Can you cancel it early? Can I cancel it early? So I'll tell you how I like to answer this question. The agreement's for a year. You can cancel it with an email to me saying, I don't want to work with you anymore. And I can cancel it with the same email. So it's for a year to begin with. Basically, if you decide this isn't working out, you can send me an email and we're done. Anything I showed you up to that point, there is a commission due on if you buy it. Anything after that point, you're totally done. What does it say my responsibilities are? What does it say your responsibilities are? Is it an exclusive agreement for me? In other words, do I need to exclusively use you to buy or sell properties? And then if you really want to be feisty, once they tell you, yes, it's exclusive, you say back to them, is it exclusive for you? In other words, you will only be showing me the best deals, or will you be showing yours to other clients too? I've already told you the answer, but that's a pretty feisty thing to say. But it's weird, right? It's double standard. No doubt about it. That's how the agreement's written. Do you ever work with someone without this agreement? It's a good question to ask. References. What percentage of your business is from new clients? What percentage is from repeat business from existing clients? And what percentage of your business is referred business from existing clients? Do you have a few, that means 3, existing clients that you work with in the last 6 months? That does not mean friends from high school. You want recent people that I can call as references. And then I realize people don't always agree. Tammy loves this one. If I stumble upon your most troublesome client, what would be their biggest complaint about your service? Warning, if they say they've never had a problem, they have not had enough clients, as problems naturally come up in business. So Tammy and I were discussing like what we would say to this one. And we really struggled to come up with some stuff, which is weird because it says if they struggled, they haven't been in business long enough. But
Well, it's more that they're just some relationships that don't, we decide at the outset, like, we're not a good fit.
I think that's true.
We're somewhat proactive sometimes, that they're just some people we realize we can't serve well. And
Yeah.
so instead of trying to meet everyone's needs, we're just clear.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we'd be more willing to walk away and say, this is not working out for us. Let me put you in touch with someone else who can help you here, but I'm not a good fit for you. What you're trying to do is just not what we do. So, have you worked with any real estate investors that have invested like I'm doing? Can I call them about your service? I think those are reasonable questions to ask. All right, any questions? Was that helpful? Kind of some inside scoop as to what's going on behind the scenes for this stuff and what I think is important. So what do you think is the #1 way to find an agent now? If you had a situation like Tammy's where we're trying to find an agent in another market, what do you think we do?
Contact other agents.
Contact other agents? But they're going to try to tell us use them, right?
Right.
I probably would recommend, for Tammy, I probably would recommend we look at sales volume for properties in that market.
That's transactions, right?
Yep, transactions. And make sure that they're very similar to what we're trying to do. And look at those. Maybe call their managing broker and ask them how the managing broker thinks that they're going to do. That could be an idea for that too. If they have CRS, that's a plus. If they're a realtor, that's a little plus. I think part of it's personality. Part of it is competence in their team. I think those are kind of factors. Fee is probably a factor, but I mean, I would have a little bit of flexibility. What's that?
It's not the strongest factor.
I would agree.
I want someone who can do the job,
Yeah.
especially with a weird property.
Yeah. So I'm not shopping for low fee. I'm shopping for competence, because having the inside look at the business, there are a lot of things that can get screwed up. And if you do an agent that hasn't had a lot of experience in the marketplace, what they don't know can hurt them. If they don't know to kind of look out for certain problems, it can end up costing you a lot more than anything you saved. If you think you're going to get by and do a 4% commission where they get 1 and the buyer's agent gets 3 or whatever it is, they could easily cost you that 2% without really blinking too hard at all. So you got to be super careful about that. Yeah. Anything else you'd add, Tam? That's it. All right, cool. Any other final questions? Cool. Well, thank you for coming, guys. I appreciate it. I will see you all next week for whatever class we're doing. Thanks for coming.